Hi, welcome. This is Jelle from Growing Bonsai, and for a change I'm starting with the final image of a styling video. I have noticed in my statistics some people just come to see the first image and the last image, so here you go. This is the final image. If this is all you were interested in this video, you can click away now. If you don't, follow this video. If you like what you see, hit the like button and let's discuss this tree. This is a Taxus baccata and there is a story behind it. It is not my tree. Don't you hate it when other people have better bonsai than you and you actually had the chance to have that tree and you didn't take it? This tree I have been looking at for a couple of years now and I just styled it. It has been in my garden for about 6-7 weeks now, and this video is about this tree going from a shrub, as it was before, to what it is now, how I got there, and also the story of this tree, because this tree doesn't belong to me. It is the tree of a friend of mine, and the first time he came to me he was actually asking me, I don't think I should keep this. I don't think this will be a nice tree. There's too many branches, there's too many trunks. Great bonsai have great trunks. That is something that's often said. And certainly that is true for this tree. This yew is from a friend of mine and he was here last weekend and we discussed this tree. Originally he brought it to me 2 years ago. We repotted it, we put it into this pot to get it a little bit healthier because there was not a lot of foliage on it, and now you see it is nice and lush. Lots of nice, good backbudding. This tree is ready to be worked. The owner really would like to have this in a sort of a rafty style. This is going to be the tallest tree. It's going to be tilted back a little bit. This is going to be a foliage pad here. We're going to have a foliage pad here, a foliage pad here in the front, and a top canopy, a pad in the back, some lower pads here. The main deadwood work is done and I've started to wire out and position the rest of the branches. You can see here the first branch is set. I've used a little tension wire to some deadwood to pull this inward, bringing the branch as a whole down, creating the first pad with basically the foliage here. Also what I've done, and this is a tip for you if you are wiring a bigger tree, you can't always hold it at the position that you want to, so I often put it in another pot at the angle that I want to use. Then no matter what I do, I can rotate it or I can remove it, I can even put it outside. It will always remain in this angle until next repotting. You can then take it out. But until the time it is nice and stable in the same potting angle. Now what you have to know is that a Taxus has very pliable wood. That is why they make the longbows out of them in the UK. So that means that if you bend the branch down and you position it like this, it can take many years to set. So I'm going to try to find a way to use most of these thicker branches without bending them, and if I do bend them, I'm afraid it's going to be tension wires and a lot of heavy wire to get it in place. And then the owner will have to wait 3 to 5 years for the bigger branches to set. These smaller branches can still take over 2 years to set on a yew. Now it's always a bit of a challenge with a tree like this to decide what to remove and what not. If you look from your viewing angle, you see here this branch and this branch. There's a fork here, but from the front they seem to intersect roughly at this point, right? So this comes down and goes up, this goes up and then comes down. Now the natural line of branches is to hang down as they go further out, so this would be pulled down a little bit more perhaps, or just wired out, which means that you have a very clear crossing branches situation here. And this one I try to, but you can't really bend it without taking drastic measures. Now if I look at the tree, I can also notice that there's big branches here in the back and here that I could bring into this space to fill this portion here. There's a very big branch all the way here in the top that I could lay flat and fill the space here. So I'm thinking about removing this branch completely. What I'll do first is this very long branch, which is just a side branch here. Remove that, because this I will never need. And upward growing branches here I also don't need. So I can remove that one. This way, slowly, you create space in the canopy You remove sub-branches that you absolutely will not need. And you can then see what happens in your canopy. Do I have the space? Do I have an option to develop this canopy with the branches that I'm left over with? What I then will do, I'll wire this one out to create a pad here. And then I'll look again at this area, whether I want to remove it or not. Maybe once this is wired out and hangs down a little bit more, this is not so annoying anymore. And probably this one or this one will have to be removed. So this is the way that I go through the canopy. This one has been wired out, but will be brought down further. Over a couple of days I'll sink it off. I don't want to risk breaking it here. Here I've wired out the first branches as well to position it. This is basically the furthest to the right that the pads can come. This is almost twice the distance to this main trunk as what this one has. So once, twice. Yeah, I think this is roughly the end, which means that potentially this is all going to go. I'm just going to wire this into position as the first pad here. So when it comes to working with the yew, it's a very interesting species. In order to get most backbudding, you have to remove the old needles. So you can see here on this branch, there's no old needles here. And there's a lot of needles here. In fact, bad demonstration because there are some backbuds. But typically, when working your tree, you remove all the old needles from the stem. And you remove all the needles also from the side branches, leaving maybe 6 to 8 on the ends. This way the tree will be very open when you're wiring it, and when the sun hits it you get lots and lots of backbudding on the branches that you've just cleaned out. So now this would be ready for wiring out. Then of course you go through the branches and you say, well, what part of the branch do I want to keep? If you want just a very short branch, you can cut it here. If you want a little bit longer branch, you cut it here. If you want a very long branch, you keep everything, but then you have 2 branches here. As there's one branch here and another one here, you would clip this one off. These are all options that you could use. What I've done in this tree, I've kept everything. I've not removed a lot of needles from the branches itself, and I've worked with most of this. That will allow the owner to trim back all the way here, massively reducing the length of the branches. Meanwhile, hoping to get some backbudding here, so that in future you can go back to here and have a few backbuds there. Right, so I've wired this branch out and I've pulled it down a little bit. You can't really see it because all of these branches here, but it does show that this branch is actually not needed for the tree. Sorry David if I'm making a mistake here, but this is going to go. So a lot more space now in the tree. As I said, this I want to fan into this position a little bit. Fanning it out, creating a bigger pad for the tree. Just like that. Now you can also much better see the pad that I've created here. But if you look from the top, you can see the pad much better. So the top view, the main branch coming in, going to the left and down, and the secondary branch going in and to the front. Now this branch here I said I can bring over. I'm not sure whether the wire is already strong enough, but I think it will be. Just like that. You see then all of a sudden I have lots of foliage here again, filling up this space in the back and here on top. So I can create a pad here in this space just with this back branch, and then I have some side branches here that I can position here to create a bit of foliage in this space. And then we're getting towards the top and the back branches. As I was bending this side branch, it cracked, and what you see here, the shine, is petroleum jelly. This effectively stops evaporation taking place from the wound, and because it didn't break across the fibers but in length with the fibers, I have good hopes that this branch will survive. Also, the buds that are on this branch have kept on extending. So I think that in spring this will burst out with growth from all these little buds here on the side branch. This wire is a little bit thick, but it is nice because it sits quite well. So you wire a branch along the length and you make sure that you wire all the way up to the green part, just like that. This is something you don't want. You want the needles to be completely free. You can go into the green part, but then you have to loop the wire between the needles. Cut it back, and this way you have the main branch, of course, already wired, but then all these side branches should be wired as well. For this I would use a 1mm aluminium wire. This is 1.5mm that I've used for wiring this out. What I've done in the tree, there were a lot of branches where, let me show, there were only branches on the side. Then what do? Well, one of the things that you can do is of course cut back and wait for backbuds. But you can also say, no, I'm going to create a single pad out of this. And you do this by bending the branch a little bit in a loop. Just like that. Now from the side, this looks like a nice filled branch. Nice and filled for the 4 pieces of foliage. And from top you get something like this. This way you get a nice rounded pad. Later, once more buds starts to grow, this one for instance you can start clipping back and making a better pad. But this is a way that you can actually create a pad when you don't have foliage on one side of the branch. And this is what I've done with very big branches on the street. Let me show you. So here you can see the branch looping around with pretty much all the side branches coming out towards the outside, and on the inside there were no side branches. That way you can generate a pad without actually having one. We go to the side. This now looks like a nice filled out pad, even though from the top there's hardly anything and all the branches just come from one side branch on the tree. Hope it is a little bit focused. After about 5 hours of wiring and pruning, you see I have very low, long hanging branches on this side. This is a nice peak. I've cleaned out deadwood and old bark. Now it is time to wait. There's lots of buds on the inside that can now start to push. And over the course of the summer, I'll recommend my friend to look at young branches. There's a few young branches that I haven't wired out. They might become droopy. They have to be put in place. I might give it a little bit of a tweak. Now if you look at this tree, what I've done, I've basically just pulled a lot of the branches that were big bushy. I pulled them down. I removed some of the inner needles. Here it is very clear that removing the needles leads to massive backbudding in a yew. Now the main consideration for the front has been that this is a very interesting trunk with lots of scars and deadwood. The big branch we wanted to keep, so it becomes sort of a raft, semi-cascade like tree shape. The top is not completely done yet. I could of course add a very thick wire here and put a small loop to the side and back, but the alternative, and this is what I've gone for right now, but I might change my mind in a minute, is to not wire it out, but in the future cut it back here and regrow this part of the canopy. The reason is, from here to here there's very little taper. Adding very thick wire here will mean that it will stay on a long time and might scar. So that's one of the things that I'm still contemplating what to do with. Now next to this you can see that a few of the smaller branches have not been wired. In fact, I see a branch here that has not been wired because it should be clipped. Let's take that off. Because this obstructed the view from the front. In between here there's now a bit of space. This deadwood is actually already in the way. It might have to become shorter. There's a little piece of deadwood here that I forgot. Just going to make this as short as possible. I'm going to wire out the last few branches, do a bit of final positioning. But all in all, this is pretty much what I had in mind when I started off. All done, wired. It is pushing really well. I did kill one of the small branches here. I'll clip that off. But besides that, I'm pretty sure the owner will be quite pleased with this. Now look at the tree now. It has pushed, it has nice fresh growth, And in fact, it is almost time to start pinching it, but tomorrow this tree is going to go back to my friend's place. So I get to enjoy it a little bit more. It's pushing well. All the branches have survived. Even the one that cracked here in the back is pushing, pushing, pushing. This is full of life and energy. I'll water it, I'll give it a little bit more fertilizer, and then I'll pack it in my car to bring it to my friend's place tomorrow. Such a nice tree.